spiritual awakening to inspire your personal enlightened journey. I'm your host, Megan Mary, international best-selling metaphysical author and founder of Inner Realms Publishing. Let's bring in the light. Welcome. Today we have Dawn Delvecchio. She has walked the path of the priestess for more than 38 years in devotion to the divine feminine awakening with humanity. She is committed to spiritual and practical service in the world through retreats, online courses, deep dive soul astrology services, and free offerings. Dawn is the host of the highly successful Return of the Priestess Annual Summit, the lineage bearer of the Mother Spirit Priestess line, and the author of the Amazon #1 bestselling book for women in business, Spirit, Mind, and Money. Dawn is dedicated to her role as priestess and ascension guide, serving women who choose to hold the light of love in these times. Welcome, Dawn.
Hey, thank you, Megan. Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation, so I'm excited to get started. So my first question is going to be, what does enlightenment mean to you?
Ooh, that's a big one. Let me tune into this because there's a lot that could be said. I want to be concise. To me, pure, true enlightenment is the fully awakened state. It's the remembrance totally of love's presence, where we become liberated from the rules and regulations of this dense 3D or Newtonian world. It is being able to see beyond the veils of our illusion of separation in what is a kind of dream here in this world, in this realm. So enlightenment is the liberation from this realm. It's our graduation when we achieve enlightenment.
Yes, the veil of illusion and the separation. I completely resonate with that. It's what I speak about so often on this show and in my work in terms of this reality being a dream and the dream world actually being more of a reality than we take it for granted. So that's an excellent explanation. So you do so many interesting modalities out in the world, but I'd like to go back in your history to how you came to do the work that you are doing. Take us to a moment in your past where you experienced whatever shift it was that then led you down the path to what you're doing today.
Yeah. Yeah. So that essential moment in this incarnation was being pregnant as a teenager and knowing I wanted to have a home birth. So this is 1984. I was almost 19 years old and I wanted to have a home birth. And I researched, as one did back then, which was not internet research, calling up nurse midwives to find midwives who did home births in the state where I was living, which was Connecticut. And I found a couple of midwives, and they introduced me to other women who were having home births in 1984. And one of the women said, "Does anyone want to start a mother support group?" And so I was young and didn't have a lot of support for my alternative ideas. I wanted to breastfeed for a long time, have him at home. It was going to be a natural birth and eat natural food at the all of that stuff. So I, of course, raised my hand, and so there were 6 of us who ended up starting what we said was a mother support group, and we would meet every other Monday. Some of us had had our babies and some were still pregnant. So we journeyed together for several years and ended up exploring goddess spirituality. And it all began with the Mother Peace Tarot deck. And in time, we ended up initiating ourselves in as a circle of priestesses under the name Mother Spirit. And as life happened, that journey went on. We went our separate ways. Some of us are still connected. Some have actually left their bodies and they've moved on from the earth realm. And yeah, so that's where it really began for me.
That is an interesting story I did not expect. Wow, yes. I mean, how wonderful that you came together not with the intention that you did. I mean, it was to support each other, but not in the way that you thought it would be. More in a physical, sounds like really physical way, not necessarily, and emotional, but not in a necessarily spiritual way. And all of a sudden, once you got that together, there was this greater purpose that brought you together, right?
Yes, absolutely. The goddess, the divine mother, was awakening in the hearts of women around the world, or in some parts of the world, those of us who had the luxury of such things. I realize we have many sisters still on the planet who are in no position to explore their spiritual curiosities, but we were able to do that. And I was the youngest of the group. Our two eldest have since passed. So, yeah, so that's how it began. Now, as life goes on, of course, it isn't some linear straight path. I've done many things since then, including moving into the world of the martial arts and very masculine energies. But fast forward to, I want to say 2016 was when I got, now I always carried this energy with me. I always was doing tarot. I was an astrologer. It never went away, but this divine feminine aspect, working with women in the priestess path, that came back online in 2016 when I was in Bali during a conference. And I got a very clear message that it was time for me to really do my inner work and step up into sacred feminine leadership.
I know you talked about stepping into very masculine energies with the martial arts. How can someone who doesn't really know what that means, but thinks it sounds great, what exactly is that concept in terms of embodying that energy?
Yeah, this is a great question. Thank you. So let me just take a moment here. So there's two streams I want to bring together here when it comes to embodying divine feminine. One is the embodiment itself. When we want to embody higher codes of light, higher frequency, higher consciousness states, we have to do our shadow work. We have to become aware and self-aware and do the work it takes to heal, release, up level, love up in frequency, those aspects of ourselves that we've denied, suppressed, or buried. And that's not always bad stuff. You know, sometimes we've denied, suppressed, and buried our greatest gifts. Sometimes we've denied, suppressed, and buried the parts that we think are ugly, our hate, our rage, our resentment, our wounded child, all of that. So that needs to be honored and worked. And that's a journey, right? That's not just a like, I did my shadow work. It doesn't work that way. Nor does it require, I would say, years of talk therapy. This is often a somatic experience using many different processes, breath work, plant medicine, ceremonial space, prayer, but it's a deep journaling work, deep inner self-honesty, reflections from others, these kinds of things. So that's the shadow work piece, that we have to make room within our energy bodies and our physical vessel to hold more light. And that can't be done when we're dragging around decades or incarnations worth of resentments, fears, insecurities, fill in the blank. So that's the one stream. It's the divine feminine energy. And that is really an inward turn initially. It's about being able to be in receptivity, and that means to receive nourishment, nurture, compassion, understanding. So I'll give an example here. So as I said, I was, in the martial arts world, the warrior world. And then even long after that, when I started my businesses, I would drive myself like a man. I would get her done. You got your list, you got your checkpoints, you got your smart goals, and you hire a really expensive coach and you do. Oof. I mean, that energy is so kind of 3D, right? The feminine, the divine mother energy says, and I got very clear guidance very recently that if I am to go to the next level of really embodying and being a conduit for this frequency, I must stop, rest, and receive the mother's love myself. And so that's the other aspect of it. And this is not about eating bonbons and watching TV, obviously. These are about self-care practices, self-nurture, the ability to just rest. Sometimes I just go into the temple and I just lay there and I just take a little nap or rest or just stare out the window and look at the forest. It's about self-care, so health, nourishment, playfulness, delight. All we have to do is think about what would a loving, supportive mother do. She would care for her children, and her children would receive that. She would protect her children. Sometimes there's the fierce aspect, right? Kali, Durga, Pele, there's many of those archetypes. So it's really the shadow work and then embodying the divine feminine by allowing yourself to receive, to be in receptivity to downloads, inspiration, care, self-care, gifts, that sort of thing.
I love all of that. I want to start with the shadow work. Yes, because that is so much of what I do as well. I feel the subconscious is very much the shadow. And dream work is one of the ways that we can do the shadow work. Look at the things, like you said, that aren't necessarily all problems. Sometimes they're gifts, they're messages, they're opportunities that we're missing, that are latent in our minds, but that we just are not acknowledging. We're not taking the time and the self-care. I call dream work the ultimate women's self-care because it is an opportunity for us to pause, for us to give our subconscious mind credence to say, this is an important message that's coming to me that I need to listen to and that offers something for me. And that by tapping into that universal wisdom, we're relinquishing all of that go, go, go checklist energy, which is very much the way our society curates us to be, tells us that that is how progress is made. But it's true that in order to do that, like any meditative practice, any reflective practice, you have to make the space. You have to hold the space. You have to dedicate time to the practice. And in doing so, you elevate its importance. You start to realize its value. And not only that, but when you do that, it starts to synergistically change your perception of reality, change your perception of yourself, which really gives you so much more to move forward with. And there's many ways to do that, right? Like you said, the breath work, the sound therapy, the energy healing, Reiki, all of those things offer that potential. And then once you move that out and you start to free up that energy, then all of a sudden you can be that vessel for that universal wisdom, which we are all meant to be. And when we can get that, start getting those downloads, that's where the tipping point comes in for that great awakening that's happening. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that because I know you were doing this work many years ago, but what do you see happening recently in terms of the spiritual ascension of the planet?
Great question and beautifully said. Thank you for that beautiful transmission and the power of the dream work as being it's that liminal space. It's not linear. It's when we go to the right side of the brain and allow revelation through imagery, impression, and seemingly not connected things that actually are in the subconscious. So, in terms of what's happening now, so when I go back in time, what we were doing back then was learning archetypes, divine feminine archetypes. We were reclaiming divine feminine energies. We were learning about the goddess, learning about ceremony, about ancient ceremony, that sort of thing. There was still a lot of what you would call dualistic thinking, like we're going to work with the elements and make things happen, or gods out there or goddesses out there and I'm here. What I see happening now, I mean, it's a totally different planet now. And I love the way you said that thing about we're curated to behave a certain way because we have lived in a hierarchical, a top down structure in which a very few at the top benefit from us being ignorant slaves, to use a harsh term, but just basically you could say sleeping at the wheel or being in the little cogs in the wheel, in the little mice on the hamster wheels. But what's happening now is a great realization and great awakening that, wait a minute, we're the creators of this. And this whole system of like kings and royalty and people who are more valuable is nonsensical. So sometimes the awakening is sort of socio-political. You people are questioning like, wait, why do we do this? This doesn't make sense. Why is there such disparity between countries or peoples or whatever? And so that's one way. But the other thing that's happening is people are awakening to the remembrance of their unity with all of life, the oneness that we really are, and recognizing, as you said earlier in this is the dream. We are actually having a dream of separation from that which we call God. And in this dream, we have to push our bodies around and move things in space to go through time to make things happen. But more and more, we're starting to understand, realize that we have much greater power when we come out of identification with that avatar called Dawn or Meg and Mary or, whoever. So that it is a consciousness awakening, whereas before, there was a call and there was a curiosity and there was a yearning to remember something that was anciently lived. Now it's actually starting to happen. Now we're having the embodiment experiences. We're having big spiritual awakenings, big spiritual, or what you would call like those soul grok moments that are mystical and profound. And you just know, like because you've had the experience. And it doesn't matter that someone says, oh, it's just your imagination, because you know what truth is deep inside yourself. So I hope does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's a fantastic explanation of the difference over time, very much from an esoteric standpoint in terms of conceptualizing that the power lies without, and then also sort of that modality of requesting its favor, right? Which I think was, in my mind, what the goddess worshiping was maybe 30 years ago, and maybe even 20, well, yeah, 40 years ago. It was very much that we're drawing down the moon, right? We're bringing it to us from out there. And we are then, like you said, possibly manipulating the elements or using things in the physical to achieve that end. And I think that's where I always got lost, was that it's out there and I have to go find it and beg it to come in kind of thing. Also, we have to make this arrangement in this area and have all of these physical pieces and do these things with these physical pieces. And in doing that, that's going to create it. I feel that was very limiting and very disempowering in a way as an approach. And I think now with this awakening that's happening and the remembering, people are starting to do this work out in the quantum. They're not even necessarily gathering these things physically. They're not requesting that these energies come and bid them favor. They are realizing they are already them.
Yeah, that's the embodiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you are enjoying my podcast and are intrigued by dreams and stories of spiritual awakening, I would like to personally invite you to explore my international best-selling metaphysical trilogy, Witches of Maple Hollow. Like a mystical fairy tale, these fall-themed mysteries weave cozy supernatural fantasy into enchanting tales of magic and self-discovery. Start with Book 1, The Dream Haunters. The Book Life Prize calls it packed to the brim with surprise portals, ancient traditions, and dream worlds. Then dive into the elusive nature of reality in the dream mirrors. And finally, unravel ancestral riddles beyond time and space in the dream dimensions. Get your exclusive signed copies today at meganmary.com. Stop by the store while you're there and grab your dream journals, cozy blankets, pillows, candles, and more. And don't forget, they also are available in audiobook. Come visit me in Maple Hollow.
Moving into the quantum field in our consciousness so that we remember that we are that, and then bringing it back into the self and walking in the world with it instead, as I used to say, beseeching a boon from the goddess, just please, please,
Yes. Which is very much the whole approach of organized religion.
Mhm.
That is it. Precisely. And so, as much as when I was younger, looking for a way out of that and a solution that wasn't so male focused, what I found was something very the mirror of it that was female focused. And it still didn't answer the question. It still didn't empower me, right? Because it was very much the please approach.
Yeah, I think for me that and for those of us in the original Mother Spirit and probably many at that time, the empowerment came from reclaiming the archetypes of divine feminine. And
Hmm.
really, because there was nothing in literature, it was all guys and women were the housewives or whatever. So really understanding and connecting with these powerful goddesses. Now, our Eastern sisters, some of them, they kept that all along, especially India, but also Nepal and other places, remembering, Kali and Durga and Lakshmi. But even there, if you go today to these countries, you see that the common person, they're beseeching a boon from a god or a goddess or Ganesha or whoever. It's
Right.
still that consciousness. It's the separation consciousness of this realm. It's what we're popping out of. It's what we're evolving out of.
Hmm. And I have to wonder, I definitely think that the goal of all of this is first to recognize it, but then secondarily, once we do and we raise our vibration and our frequency to the point that we are no longer operating that way, what is going to happen then to our physical existence? Is it going to be the same or even required anymore in terms of where the evolution of the planet is going? I often wonder about that because when we talk about ascension, of course, many people think that means going up into the higher realms, which means no longer being here. But there is that undercurrent that many of us have chosen to incarnate at this time because we are supposed to be straddling the physical and the spirit to help all of the other people attain that. But what happens at that tipping point?
It's a great question. I mean, who knows,
Yeah.
really? I can just share my speculation that slowly over time, Earth Gaia will be a planet for beings that are less dense. So
Yes.
we don't maybe need to eat as much food, for example. I've heard it said that Lemurians were like that. We could be potentially breatharians or just with water or something like that. To me, these bodies and this earth are still, even though Gaia is ascending too, we're becoming more crystalline, but it's still a slow process. We're in a very dense physical realm. So, it's interesting. I don't necessarily see that this body mind vehicle is going to change in this form, but my own reincarnational journey, if I choose to come back to Gaia, may be very different. One thing, though, I wanted to say, and I heard this recently, I'm sorry, I can't remember where I heard it from, but this idea that if we were to take our bodies and go back 100 or 200 years before electricity, that we might appear like glowing beings. Because first of all, think of, or that if you took a person in the body of someone before electricity and you brought them here, they might get very sick and die very quickly because Now, part of that is negative, or a lot of it, because the electromagnetic net we've developed around our planet has changed us. Our bodies have had to adapt to it for better or worse. I mean, it does show the genius of these vehicles we have, these avatar bodies. But so the human body may have been changing all along, but because it's slow, we don't perceive it as such. So perhaps 1,000 years from now, people will be like, wow, I wonder what it was like back then during that, that time when the planet was ascending. Oh, people's bodies were so dense and heavy. They ate meat all the time just to stay grounded. Really?
Yes. And that's kind of what I'm wondering, you know,
Yeah.
the biological processes and all those sorts of things, the humaning, right? Which
Mm.
which once you go through a lot of this awakening, for lack of a better term, you realize that the tethering to the 3D is a real drag. All of the humaning things that you have to deal with are just so 3D.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so 3D. Yeah.
hmm Yeah, and the concept of time also. I've been exploring that so much in my writing in terms of time and space being part of those constraints of 3D, particularly because they're so human contrived. The calendar and the clock were not necessarily things that existed before we created them. And yes, there was the day and the night and the seasons and those things were there, but all of these other things that have placed a regimented cage upon our perceptions of reality that have allowed us to completely lose touch with the fact that it's a lot more fluid than that.
Mm. That's an excellent point, and that really illustrates the whole energetic of awakening. This image of this cage, these sometimes I say what we're doing is we're dismantling old architecture in the mind, because there's the whole thing about creation too. We're at a point where we really have to create from a different energetic. And I touched on that when I talked about, driving myself in a masculine way, smart goals and all that stuff. Now, sometimes that stuff is called for. We got to tie our shoes, we got to put gas in the car, those kind of things. But the creation energetics are, to me, I see it more archetypally feminine now. It's not about, ooh, I have an idea, let's back engineer how to launch that and make $1 million. Internet marketing stuff. It's really about being in divine receptivity, which requires the stillness, requires the self-care, receiving the download, letting it gestate, nurturing it, and then birthing it forth with the information that you share with others. But it has to come from that place of the deep feeling of like, this is the yes. And that comes from that receptive state, the receptivity for the creativity and the inspiration, not from an idea I'm gonna drive this sucker home until it works.
Yeah, not the commercialization of it, not the commodification of it. And it's really fascinating to me because we have a very similar background in that we both have degrees in English and that we also both worked in internet marketing. So that is very interesting to me because you start out with this very etheric, literary, symbolic background, and then move into that, what I think you could say is, initially anyway, a very masculine energy of the internet and technology and marketing. And then what happens? We both become healers and embodied goddesses and really working out in the world with this new energy, the new earth essentially. And before I ever heard what the new earth was or heard other people talking about it, I actually had a dream where these women were at this retreat, and I put this in my book where they welcomed me and they said, "Welcome to the new earth." And I was just kind of like, huh, what is that?
Oh, that's beautiful.
So, I mean, that's really what's happening. It's so amazing when you take the time to listen. The difference between meditating and praying, the difference between speaking and listening, allowing to receive.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, it's a good time to be alive. It's a challenging time. I'm grateful that I get to be a woman in this life, a Western woman, because I had the advantages and opportunities to explore myself and come into leadership and embodiment in what I wanted to do, what felt resonant for me. So I'm very grateful for those things. And I do feel like the mother ray of God has returned to earth, to our consciousness, to our ability to be more balanced. And it's the women called to it who are the emissaries. Not because this is not a diminishment of men. In fact, that would be that's another agenda. Let's slam the men and put them down and make a matriarchy and dominate them. No, please. That's not the point. That's not a mother energy. So yeah, it is a extraordinary time to be alive, and I feel very blessed to be able to have conversations like this and to share this in sacred sisterhood and with brothers as well.
Yes, and to just have it go out globally for everyone that needs to hear it. That's the beauty of the podcast is that you actually don't ever know who's listening, and you have to trust that it will find those that need to hear it. And you may never know the impact that it's having on them, but that is the duty, right, of the call. I mean, very much received the call to create the platform and do the work and trust that it's making that impact.
Yeah.
So when you work with other women and lead them on this path of the priestess line, what is the mentoring that takes place?
Hmm. Yeah, there's several different things that I have going on. I mean, my flagship program is called Mother Spirit, and it's a 13-month, 13 temple trainings that we go through that is really a practice of deep inner work where we're looking at the shadow aspects of what is mother, what is father, what is child, and then all of the chakras and the energies associated with them. These are deep explorations of our own inner experience in this journey of called life or in other incarnations as well, in order for women to really see themselves in a new light, be witnessed by their sisters. These are small group programs, small group journey, and evolve themselves to a new level of their own inner embodiment of divine feminine energies, release of old unhealed stuff, and the acceptance of the grace of the divine feminine energy so that they can be like an emissary of the goddess, we could say, an emissary of the divine feminine. And so that's my flagship. That's the longest investment of time, money, energy. It's a beautiful, beautiful training, and I offer it every other year because it's so intensive. But I also do retreats. So you could see this picture here. This is called the Temple of the Mothers, and it's a Mongolian yurt, and it's on my property. I do retreats where I have anywhere from 6 to 15 women, depending on where it is and the space I have, and the themes vary, but I basically go into the conduit state and download and sometimes channel. I also do trance channeling, but often it's the downloads of what are we doing now? So my last retreat was in Thailand, and I stand by the ocean every morning and say, okay, what would you have me do today? And I just tune into higher self, water, mother, and get the download, and then we journey from there. And then I have courses, online courses as well, that are more didactic trainings of specific themes, specific focuses. It could be forgiveness, it could be divine mother codes, it could be priestess and ceremonial training, like that kind of stuff. But there's always an element of sharing, and there's always an element of women coming into their own truth and sharing that truth from the heart.
That's
Yeah.
a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and then I have a community as well. So there's actually a private community that we have live streams twice a month, and there's the transmission that's coming through me, or the guidance or the teaching, whatever it is. And then there's the sharing. There's the opportunity for each woman to speak of her wisdom knowing, her questions, her growth, her challenges. So it becomes this container of transformation to greater or lesser degrees, depending on the course or the experience.
Where can people find you if they want to explore more of the Priestess line and the services you offer?
Yeah, best place is my website, dawndelvecchio.com. So it's just my name in one word, .com. And you could also look me up on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. I've got lots of videos there. So yeah, I would love for people to visit and subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's not as easy to get views anymore as it used to be. It's kind of a saturated platform, but I offer channelings on there and lots of free stuff. So
Great. And I'll link to those in the show notes as well.
thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Dawn. It was wonderful to speak with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Did you enjoy this episode? You can now send me a text message and share your experience. Be sure to subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Head over to my YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button as well to be part of my growing community. Are you ready to take the next step in your spiritual journey? Don't miss out on the new Dream Empowerment programs. Unique opportunities for you to unlock your inner wisdom, discover your authenticity, align with your higher self, and bring abundance into your life. If you'd like your dream or awakening story featured on my show, submit it today. Your dreams have the power to inspire and enlighten other women on their journey. Visit meganmary.com to find out more.